A story as this one is as old as the ocean. Once it's begun, gains perpetual motion. A tale, a yarn, to pass by the time. An account so peculiar, I thought it should rhyme. Of a stout fishing schooner, seaworthy and stable, both ship and her crew, objectively able. So journey with me, far from the land. To relay this account, I received second hand. In 1944, outlined in chalk, her lines drawn outwards from her first keel block. Her ribs were all sawn, affixed for her frame. Her planks were all shaven, bent over flame. In the Lunenburg yard, past the Smith ruling gate, she wasn't their first, she was hull 198. They knocked her together, just like all the others. They lofted her masts, bowsprits, and rudders. She sat on the slip, they leaded her bottom. They coated her topsides and tapped in the cotton. They pitched all her seams, tarred all her rigging, stretched all her sails, and removed all her cribbing. They sanded her deck and gave it a good swashing. The rest of her salted, after proper washing. Ready for launch, when the day finally came, all work completed, she just needed a name. Frances Geraldine, she was named by her owners, named after the wives of two of the donors. Cod fishing would be her very sole purpose. Her very first season should cover the purchase. The captain, Tanner, had already been chosen. 2 trips he to make, for the harbor was frozen. All which remained was send her down the slip, take her to Hilliman's, and get her equipped. The bottle was broken on her bow line so fine. It wasn't champagne, just a cheap-tasting wine. It shattered and sparkled as the wine bottle struck. This exercise conducted to ensure her good luck. Builders and owners watched on from the bleachers. She's a fine vessel, has all the good features. Frances Geraldine, oh, what her fortunes may bring. She shall be of good service to country and king. Within a few weeks she was thrust into action. A ship such as she was all the attraction. With her dories all shipped and the trawls all baited, the crew and the captain being financially motivated, they let go from the dock with all sails hoisted. 30 degrees to the windward the fine schooner pointed. Master and cook and men of all ranks, they sailed onward, close hauled, towards the Grand Banks. The years went onward, she passed all her seasons. She was never high liner, though the captain had reasons. She always made it home, with a hold of salt fish. All men made a living, though none made it rich. She was everything her owners had hoped her to be, and the men called her home when they were at sea. Showing her age and all her years of hard labor, not so sharp as before, like a blunted saber. At length from salt fishing, she was retired. Her sailors put ashore, her license expired. The men wished her well, found other employment. Some never fished again, or only for their enjoyment. 10 minutes not that final voyage took. She rounded to windward, and she dropped her hook. The barnacles attached, the algae and the mold. It was here that she waited, to be scrapped or be sold. Tired and waterlogged, she tugs at her cables. Last of her kind, alone in the stables. Nose to the windward, white caps beat her hull. Her black coat of paint, all flaking and dull. Her mast cut in two with a diesel now fitted. Her ironworks cracked, rusted, pitted. In the brackish La Have, in a port of the river, the north wind so raw, Geraldine seemed to shiver. Here she remained idle, retired for years, as the men whom had worked her with blood, sweat, and tears all watched her sag from their dormers and their stoop, holding fond memories from her bow to her poop. She had served her purpose, supplied them a life, supported each sailor, their children and wife. Soft spot in their hearts for that pile of lumber hanging on her cable in her deep slumber. Her industry had changed. She was no longer required. Steel trawlers took over. Geraldine, old and tired, she was put on the block to be sold many times. Unremarkable craft, no picture on dimes. Until one day some men in pinned suits arrived from the quays wearing fine polished boots. A satchel of cash and the title was traded. The owners were nervous, fear being raided. In a room in the back, the rum poured like water, the gas bar front, run by the daughter. The men speculated on the business of the buyers, whilst hiding their bottles inside stacks of tires. They concluded at last, it must be the mob. Who else would pay for this simple job? Last thing to arrange, the vessel to deliver, sailor to Texas from the cold brackish river. Captain Owen was chosen. They then set the date. He would pilot the vessel, son Sherman as mate. The engineer would be Gerald, and along with a cook. On September the 1st, they'd haul up the hook. When the proceeds promised, their pockets to be filled. When Geraldine delivered, she could finally be billed. Fitting her out with all that they would need, just point her bow southward and proceed at full speed. The day came to depart. They pulled in her chain, southeasterly breeze and just a light rain. The engines turned over. Geraldine roared to life. As she rounded the point, Owen waved to his wife. A lookout was set forward of the stack. The cook scampered down for a lie in the rack. They made themselves busy with this thing and that. A week or two at sea, and they shall be back. Southward they travelled, fair weather in their wake. The airs they were calm, the sun she did bake. Noon was determined, latitude was observed. 36 degrees north, lunch was being served. Salt fish and potatoes boiled together. Some onions and scrumptious as fine as the weather. The voyage so far, joyous and uneventful, though little they'd known, Neptune was resentful. As night came upon them, Hatteras abeam, the engines went silent, as if she ran out of steam. Her binnacle was pointing randomly on the rose. With all engines stopped, her headway all slows. The waters were a-building, the seas rolling fast. The winds were a-backing, and they began to blast. A squall or a hurricane, all were unsure. For certain this be hell of a storm to endure. She pitched and she rolled, she shook and she shattered. Green waters washed deck, Geraldine being battered. Forward motion had ceased, she took to her beams, the old soggy planks coming apart at the seams. As the waters did gush into her hold, the pumps wouldn't run, or so I'm told. The rest of the crew knew it looked bad. They headed below as if they went mad. Owen took to the helm. Would this be his last command? The engineer and mate muster a final stand. With the others below, resigned to their fate, singing to a bottle, none could see straight. They closed all the hatches, they barred all the doors. Ship rolling hard, they sat on the floors. The engines were flooded and wouldn't restart. They took to the hand pumps, held a prayer in their heart. Like cold molasses, the night pressed on. 4 hours they pumped, still hours till dawn. Their hands were now bleeding, all cracked and sore. This trip was one, they should have stayed ashore. The sun finally broke, the winds did a bath. The sea settled down, matching the vessel's draft. The engine tried again, and it came to life. Its sound cut the silence as if buttered a knife. The compass returned and was now pointing north, for until now it obeyed an unknown force. The pumps dried the hold, a new course was set. Jacksonville, Florida seemed like the safe bet. Geraldine sputtered on, with Gerald at the wheel. The captain went below for a quick nap and meal. A day and a half, if everything goes well, they will be done with this ship in this voyage through hell. She arrived at her berth, alone at the quay. The owner sent an agent and agreed to the pay. This was close enough delivery for nefarious purpose. Likely it was smuggling that was filling their purses. The crew traveled home with the tales of adventure, new stories to tell over a rum thirst quencher. The new owners were rumored to have her refitted for smuggling drugs, though none ever admitted. They wondered what became of her. Was she renamed? One thing for sure, she'd never be the same. The Salt Bank Schooners, all forgotten and sold. The new steel trawlers fished these waters so cold. Word came from the western, she was finally lost. Geraldine was no more, repairs not worth the cost. Did she break up at sea, or was she lost on a rock? No, the Francis Geraldine, she sunk at the dock.